Welcome, everyone. My name is Ida Fernandez, and I'm the Executive Director of the Imagine Research Network. Joining me is Dr. Charles Bernstein. He's one of the co-investigators for the Imagine Network and the lead of the Inflammatory Bowel Disease Working Group for the network's main medical research study, MAGIC. MAGIC stands for Mind and Gut Interactions Cohort. Dr. Bernstein is also a gastroenterologist and a distinguished professor of medicine, the Bingham Chair in Gastroenterology Research, and the director of the IBD Clinical and Research Center at the University of Manitoba. We're talking to Dr. Bernstein today about the value of the MAGIC study from a clinician's perspective. So first of all, Charles, what information will we learn from the MAGIC study?
The MAGIC study is going to include an enrollment of 2,000 persons with Crohn's disease and 2,000 persons with ulcerative colitis, as well as 2,000 persons with irritable bowel syndrome. And the irritable bowel syndrome aspect of the study is being led by Steve Vanner from Queens. And while I, as you identified, am the lead on the IBD aspect of the study, it's really a group effort of key IBD investigators across the country at anywhere from 10 to 12 centers enrolling people. And if we achieve our goal, which we fully expect to, of enrolling 4,000 people, we'll have amongst the largest, if not the largest, cohort study of IBD in the world. And what's exciting about that is our ability to ask questions around IBD in relation to what people with IBD eat and what they eat over time, how their gut microbiome is at baseline and how it changes over time, how their mental health is and how that changes over time, and how mental health and diet and gut microbiome and the disease course all intersect. And those are all very topical, critical issues as it pertains to the health of people with IBD.
So how can the findings from this research improve people's lives?
As with any research study, it's not like someone can enroll today and in a month from now, us extract some information and immediately improve their life. It may improve their life immediately if they feel that they're contributing to the greater good and participating in research that can advance our understanding of their disease and of IBD. And I don't say that sarcastically. I mean, I think there is some, I see this in many of my patients who participate in research who really feel good about that. But we're going to be collecting data over time. And I can tell you, Ida, from cohort studies that I've done, we are still analyzing data and publishing papers from data that was collected 10 years ago. And when we have an incredible body of data, as we will from the MAGIC study, different questions come up that we may not have even thought about 10 years ago. So this is really an investment in adding pieces to improve people's lives over time. We may learn more about diet. That's so critical. Everybody wants to know about diet, both clinicians and patients and their families. Mental health is such an important topic, and it's come to the fore in this COVID pandemic. I think more people are talking about it. People without mental health problems have developed mental health problems, being stuck inside and being isolated. So that's happening to people with IBD as well. So I think there's an enormous wealth of information to gain. It may not be immediate, but it will happen.
What makes the MAGIC study unique compared to other research studies in IBD or IBS?
Well, it's extremely unique in IBS. There's very few cohort studies that have been undertaken in IBS. So while I'm the IBD lead, I am involved with IBS-related research in Imagine and in MAGIC, and I think it's really, really important. IBD is very dear to my heart, and as I've alluded to, the size of the cohort is important. It also means that we can pull out of the cohort different strata of patients. So we may be able to look at patients that are on an anti-TNF and have done well. We may be able to look at patients that are on an anti-TNF and have not done well. And we may be able to look at other categories of people who have done well not on an anti-TNF, have done well on a different type of drug. And we've published data from Winnipeg and other studies that many people with IBD are on no medications at all and are doing very well. And we want to understand who they are. And if we're recruiting 4,000 people to the MAGIC cohort, undoubtedly, we're going to have some people who are on no medications and are doing well. And perhaps we can define who they are and what they've done to allow their disease to be in such a deep remission. So I think there's the size of it, the type of questions we're asking. Not only I mentioned diet and mental health and gut microbiome. We're also looking at metabolome. Karen Matson is leading that at the University of Alberta. And that looks at issues of what type of compounds are being made that affect the way certain bodily functions are occurring, including how the gut may be working and how the gut may be producing products that we consider part of the metabolites that are being created. So I think that there's really, I think it'll be, once we've recruited our cohort, there'll be an industry of undertaking studies to ask important questions. And even now, Ida, with the collection of biomarker material, there are sub-studies going on. For instance, in Winnipeg, we've undertaken a sub-study with materials collected locally as part of the IMAGINE study, looking to see if there are epigenetic changes that can predict response to anti-TNF. Epigenetic changes refers to how our genes may be changed by different things in our environment, whether it's dietary, whether it's smoking, that can confer epigenetic changes. So in different centers in Queens and Vancouver and Toronto and Montreal and Edmonton, Calgary, Winnipeg, Halifax, Hamilton, sub-studies are either ongoing now or will be ongoing that will tap into this magic.
If you can tell me, why is it important to collect data and samples from subjects in the IMAGINE cohort for so many years?
Well, any one-time study is called a cross-sectional study. And so you can ask questions about what's going on at that time. And maybe some of the questions you ask relate to changes that have gone on over time. So you can measure a protein in the blood, or you can measure a marker in the stool, and it might reflect what's gone on over time in the past. But what will be an advantage of doing what's called a longitudinal study, which means collecting data over time, 1 year over another, is to see what's evolving clinically, see what's evolving in a few other domains. Have diets changed? Has mental health changed? Has the clinical disease changed? And then simultaneously, as we collect their stool and their blood and their urine. So in the stool, we're looking at the gut microbiome, bugs that are present in the bowel. In the urine, we're looking at those metabolites I was just talking about. And in the blood, we're looking at genes. They don't change, but there can be epigenetic changes. So that's something that we're looking at in Manitoba. But there can be other proteins in the blood, in the serum, that may be antibodies or other markers that may tell us this is a predictor of how this disease evolves. So being able to look at people over time and look at what's happening to them over time is a very strong and robust research technique to help us understand even more than what we can understand from just looking at it one time.
Can you mention also why it's important that we recruit healthy controls? We're needing to recruit 2,000 out of the total of 8,000 subjects in the study. You mentioned before there's 2,000 with Crohn's, 2,000 with ulcerative colitis, 2,000 with IBS, and then 2,000 healthy controls. Why are they important to the study?
Well, I can tell you from having led cohort studies over many years now in Manitoba, amongst the hardest thing to do is to recruit healthy controls. We're asking people who don't have a disease to give of their time in filling out a questionnaire. It's not a huge amount of time, but it is time, even if it's half an hour, to let us do a poke into probably into their inner crease of their elbow, to draw some blood, and maybe to have them collect urine and stool, even if they think that's kind of icky. But we're asking them to do that because we need to understand what's normal. What can be expected of the general population. So if we want to know that a person with IBD, that protein X is very elevated in an IBD person, we need to know what the measure of that protein is in the general population. So we really need healthy controls to understand where certain aspects of what we're measuring in IBD, or IBS for that matter, is above the normal range or below the normal range. It may give us some idea of what we might need to supplement or what we might need to try to reduce. So we really need healthy controls. Over time, we've used family members, friends, neighbors as healthy controls. Sometimes it's just people coming to our clinics who are generally well. They don't have to be perfectly well. they can have heartburn, for instance, and be mostly very well. Everybody has something. They can have a sore lower back, and they can have a sore neck, or they can have the occasional urinary tract infection. They don't have a chronic immune disease, or they don't currently have cancer, that they're mostly well. They could serve as a healthy control, and it would be enormously helpful.
What is your hope for the study? How might it change how you treat IBD patients in the future?
Well, I've been interested in both diet and mental health as it pertains to IBD for many years, and our group has. And our group have been leaders in the world in studying mental health in relation to IBD. I should mention the late John Walker, who was part of the Imagine study in its inception, who's since passed away, who was just an absolute superstar and icon. I can't speak highly enough about how much I adored him and miss him, and how he was a mentor to me, a teacher to me of research method and just being a mensch. And Leslie Graff, who's a superstar, who's the head of clinical health psychology here in Winnipeg. And now with some psychiatrist, Jatender Serene, who's also part of Imagine. We've been working together to understand how mental health disorders can impact on the course of IBD, and how IBD can impact on one's mental health, and it's certainly bidirectional. And so I'm hoping to learn more from Imagine about how best to manage patients with IBD in terms of maintaining good mental health, or alternatively helping to treat mental health disorders when they exist. With Kathy Villanos, who's a research dietitian here in Winnipeg, we've been studying for years how diet and IBD interact, and what people with IBD eat. And Russ D'Souza, who's an expert at McMaster, is our lead nutrition expert in the study. And I've worked a little bit with Russ as well, and hope that we can really be creative to understand maybe about making true dietary recommendations for people with IBD.
I'm sure that would be very welcome from the community. Thank you so much, Dr. Bernstein. Really appreciate your insight into MAGIC, and thank you for your time.